Welcome to Cecil.tv, Cecil Weekly. It is November the 13th, and I'm your host, Rob Churnside. We have a very special show tonight, and our very special friend, Mike Dixon. Welcome again to Cecil.tv.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Now, Mike, there's so much in the way of local history that you could talk about. You narrowed it down to some select characters, I understand, for tonight.
Well, that was hard to do, considering Cecil County, to narrow it down to a select set of characters, but I think we both agreed there are a few we could talk about.
Who's first?
Well, who would you like to talk about? Roadie Aurel, Pink Bug, Jack DeWitt?
Let's go with my personal favorite, Roadie Aurel Smith.
Yeah, Rodeo World indeed qualifies as Cecil County's most famous cowboy. He was, Rob, he was a character in every sense of the word, and he had come here to Cecil County after a long life. Remember, this is a guy who had been born in 1891. So by the time World War I rolled around, he's a rodeo rider, he's a gunslinger, he's there when silent movies and radio come in. Man, he is all into that. And on top of that, he was, he owned an amusement park up in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. And he was a boxing promoter and a wrestling promoter, you name it. And this is in the 1910s, 20s, 30s, and 40s. He had quite experience.
So he did the stunts and all the fights and everything in the silent cowboy movies.
Yeah, silent movies. And he was Mr. Personality. But you think of that. And then he comes to Cecil County. He bought a farm later in his life down by Perryville, right outside Perryville along Route 40. And settled in down there, and he became quite the personality in Cecil County. Anybody in he passes away, by the way, in 1980. He's 89 years old when he died. Yeah. But he would travel around the county in his cowboy outfits, literally with his guns on, his goats, sometimes his mules. He was quite the character, and he loved to talk about the old days. And he met Dale Rod. He met all the great silent movie people of the era and stuff like that.
Now, he had a horse, Silver King.
Yes.
Right? A big white horse, just like the Lone Ranger. And all
exactly.
That, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And didn't he march in the parades?
Oh, probably. Oh, if you ask me, so the parade. Probably one of the two most common stories I can think of with Roadie Aurel was he went to the parade in Middletown. It was the town's bicentennial. Well, Roadie Aurel dressed up as a cowboy. He was doing a cowboy and Indian routine, and except he had a 6-shooter along, and it had real bullets in it. Well, he was shooting up in the air with his 6-shooter as an old man, and he hit the town electrical line. The line fell down, snapped on the sidewalk, made a crackling sound, scared the mules. They kind of jerked around. Rodeo looked down, and accidentally shot the mule. So they all, yeah. After that, they were a little suspicious of Rodeo World going around to parades and stuff with the gun.
Right.
The other story they tell about him is when President Kennedy came. President Kennedy will come to town to dedicate I-95 in November of 1963, 14 days before he goes to Dallas. Rodeo World went up with his guns. Well, even back then, the Secret Service says, no, we don't want Rodeo World around here with guns because he was an old man. But he loved to tell the stories of the old times. People fondly remember him. His farm eventually got sold off right there at the edge of town, and was full of stuff. He was quite a character.
When I first moved down here from Delaware, I knew a guy that lived up on the hill. I think it was Concord Apartments, had a place up on the hill where Starboard Court and all that is now. He goes, well, I live where Rodeo Aurel's old place. I'm thinking, who's this Rodeo Aurel? Thanks for clearing up some stuff about Rodeo World and elucidating our viewers and me. Yeah. I'm sure there's more you could tell, but let's get into the next character.
And that would be?
Pink Bug.
Mr. Bug. By the way, that was his name. Family name was Bug. Mr. Bug lived down by Cokesbury, Maryland. 1963, 62, the State Highway Administration came by there building I-95, and they condemned 12 acres of his land. Now, Mr. Bug always thought that the State Highway Department did not give him a fair value for that. So he begins litigating the case. I-95 opens. It's November 14th, 1963. The interstate, all 2 lanes in each direction, of course, opens. Up at the state line, up where the toll booths are in Delaware. President Kennedy's there, the governor of Maryland, governor of Delaware. Mr. Bug decides he's going to collect his tolls. and he goes out at the Perryville Exchange, and with a shotgun and begin collecting the tolls. Well, the police will go down and put a stop to that right away. But you know, he would repeat that kind of action, Rob, over the years. But he's a perfect case of you can go up against City Hall and win. He passed. He actually won his case after he died. He dies in 1973. A couple years after, the state decided he had the Court of Appeals decided he had not been given fair value. So there wasn't a settlement, and he got a much elevated increase in the property. But Mr. Bug was another one of these mini Cecil County characters, and the call would go out and say, Mr. Bug's down on the highway collecting his tolls. Somebody better go get him off of there.
How about that? I never knew that, because I can vaguely remember going off the interstate, and you had the little basket that you threw the money in.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so that's where he stood, like right there.
Well, you wouldn't even with those 2 lanes, Rob, you wouldn't want to get out on the highway and even 63 or 64 or 65. Yeah, he would, because that was literally his property. He had 12 acres of land there, and that was all his land. So good for him.
Not bad. Well, I'm interested in having you come back. If you wouldn't tell us more about that, and maybe we didn't get to one of these other characters that would be
Sheriff DeWitt.
Sheriff DeWitt. I met him. What a great guy.
Yeah, that's a story by himself, and we'll have to talk about that another time.
That sounds great, Mike. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.